started here with everything. So last week, we were talking about the meeting the customer. So meeting the customer, we left off last week here at, before we get out there, we're going to call the customer 30 minutes in advance before we get there. And it's very important that we do that because ultimately we want to create a connection before we even meet that person. We want that customer to meet us before they meet us. Meaning, when we call that customer and we get a hold of them and they say we're coming out, it's very professional. And nowadays it's not that actually hard to be professional. Just doing the basics now is way above than what it used to be. So you just doing the basic steps is stuff people aren't doing. So it's also about building relationship, right? People value that, like, well, they actually care enough to let me know they're coming out. That does something to a customer. Then as we begin to come out, we're going to also send a text message. That text message should have a picture of you with your company logo, a templated ETA text when you're going to be there, and an infomercial almost text message, a link to like YouTube stating what you do, before and after pictures, or to your website. It's going to be very impactful. Now, when you do get to the job site, if you have a nice wrapped vehicle, we're going to be parking where they can see us. The reason that we do this, again, being punctual, being on time, they see us arrive, but now we're in a professional lettered up truck. Not too many people even have stuff on the truck, much less even have anything on there at all. So if somebody's showing up to a construction appointment and you're in a home service industry and you show up in a Prius, probably not going to go over very well. You know, you really want to be showing up and be that part. So when the other competitor has shown up and they're in a vehicle that's inferior to yours, now I'm not talking flashy, but fitting the part, plus yours is wrapped, you're going to stand out that much more. And then after we get out of the vehicle, we're going to walk to the door. And I'm being monotonous on this for a reason, because as we walk and approach the door, we're always on stage. Whenever you're a salesperson, whenever you're a business owner, we're all on stage. People are watching how you're walking through. So please don't cut the lawn. Don't walk through the flower bed. Walk up the sidewalk, take the long way around, go up to the door. Oftentimes the customer already knows that we're coming. Their greeting is at the door. And as the customer greets us at the door, this is the point to where they have already met you. They've already seen your picture. They got all your infomercial. They have talked to you. They've heard your voice. And now when you show up to the door, you already have a connection. So we're going to build on that connection. Ultimately, here at FC, we always teach the deal is already done. It's not that we have to sell a deal. It's not that we have to close a deal. The deal is already done. All we need to do is create a relationship. And why do I say that? If we had the right product information, the right resources, and the right information for the customer to research us, that's why they called us in the first place. Somebody didn't randomly see you, very rarely, and call you off the street. No, they did some research. In this day and age, they've done research on you and probably 7 other companies, and they picked 3 to come out. So you're there for a reason. The trust is already there. So all we need to do is create a relationship, and the sale is going to happen by itself. Now, ultimately, as we'll get down to it, sometimes it's not so much they're objecting to you, they're objecting to their own inability to make a decision. So we need to recognize that. Because sometimes in my early years, I would almost get offended when somebody would say no. Be like, I need to think about it. Oh, what did I do wrong? It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Now, if it is you, we need to fix it. And sometimes it can be, right? But a lot of times, it is the customer past experiences. They don't want to make the same mistake they did last time. So we're just giving them the reassurance that, hey, we are the authority in our field. And when you put your trust in our hands, we're going to steward that well. So coming down to it, when we're meeting and greeting the customer, how do we make that connection? Now, it is very easy down here in South Florida because nobody's ever from here, just simply asking, so where are you originally from? And then you start that conversation. If you're from a place where somebody's from that place, from born to where they die, it gets a little harder to ask that question. Where are you originally from? From here, you know. Oh, great. Well, you know, you get to know the person. So we ultimately want to make a connection with that person. And we need to get really good. Tony was just talking earlier about physiology and getting inside people's heads and how people work and how people think. Ultimately, everybody has a common denominator, and everybody wants to be heard, and everybody wants to talk about themselves. Everybody. You know, inherently human beings, we're very selfish individuals. I know I am. Not you guys, it's just me. But we like to talk about ourselves. And that's okay. You know, we want to express ourselves. We want to be understood. We want to be heard. So what happens a lot of times here is this whole connection point is missed. The guy shows up the door. He may or may not even introduce his name. And hopefully he shakes the customer's hand. But when he does that, when they come to the door and he just goes right into the pitch. Hey, I'm with so-and-so Bug Services. You called us out here to take care of your rats today. Now let me tell you here how we're going to do the best in taking care of your rats. And they kind of start going through this script immediately. And they don't even get the customer's name, if they even shook their hand. There's no connection even built with the customer at all. They're just rushing right into it. So a customer is going to feel, are they being sold or are they being heard? So ultimately, as salespeople, we need to get the true ideology of what sales truly is. Sales is building a relationship. That's plain and simple. We talked about, if you go back to the last video that we talked about, last week we talked about the bridge of rapport and building that bridge. And what ultimately that means is there's a gap between you and the customer, so building that relationship. So we need to get really good at asking qualified questions, because customers also aren't used to being asked personal questions. Now, when I say personal, guys, please keep it on a medium level. We don't want to go and be invasive, but we want to go further than nice dog. You know, we want to go a little further than that. So as we do that, we want to just make sure we're communicating that we hear them, that we value them, that ultimately we're there to help them first, and then out of us helping them, then we get rewarded with getting paid. So if the customer can feel that, that is the ultimate goal. So after we build that connection with the customer, what we're going to do from there is we're going to hear them out. So why did you call us out today? And a lot of times we're going to know why, but we still want to ask that question. Why did you call us out today? And as they begin to tell us, we need to hear in a place and in a state that if we were them. We don't want to be listening and be thinking of how we're going to respond to the customer. We truly need to listen to the customer, because the customer has all the information that they're going to give you to close them. You can have a mechanical script, you can have word tracks, you can have everything else. But you ever notice the really good athletes are not thinking, they're feeling. They're feeling that play. You ever see a ball player who a ball line drives hit to their face and they catch it in a millisecond? Well, they do that because of a reflex. You know, in the MLB, they can teach somebody all day long how this is the mechanics, how to hit the ball, keep your eye on the ball, twist your hip, it comes from the ground up to your knees, to the hips, and ultimately, Nate, you can tell us even more about that, right? But when it comes down to it, you still have to feel the pitch. You still have to have a reflex. Somebody can't teach you how to reflex. You have to feel that. So ultimately, what we're doing here at FC is we are creating the mechanics around the sales system and how to close, how to approach and how to do everything. But that's really the skeleton of everything. A lot of people are short-sighted to think that this alone, these explanations, these word tracks, and everything that we do is enough. But really, no. Put the meat on the bone, we actually have to go out there and apply it. And when we go out there and we apply that, when we talk to the customer and they start rushing us past where we want to be, we need to feel that. Okay, the customer wants to move on, but I still need to cover something. So what do? We don't stay mechanical and try to keep them exactly where we want them to be. We continue to go with the customer. I did that for a fact, guys, because a lot of salespeople do stay mechanical. They try to keep the customer where they want them. Go with the customer, and then after you've accomplished and answer the customer's question, come back to the step that you missed, and then you want to go on and explain with them. So after we build that connection, we hear them out, why we're even out there in the first place, we then are going to confirm. Now, hey, before we get any further, I just wanted to ask, is there anybody else joining us? The reason I ask is I have some detailed information that we're going to be going over. Right there, you're just bringing in anybody else that might be inside the house, any other decision makers. You want to keep the word decision makers, though, out of your mouth. You don't want to go up to the customer and be like, hey, before we start today, is there any other decision makers? Are you the one in charge? That is just, you might as well build up the, what do you call that wall back in the day, the Great Wall of China. Even that's what you're doing to the customer. You're creating a Great Wall of China. You're not getting over that thing. So we want to be real with the customer. So that's how we're going to approach it. Once we verify that's everybody there, now we can go into our pre-inspection. Our pre-inspection is we're going to start explaining our service and how we're going to go about it. So ultimately in a sale, we want to make sure that we're going to tell the customer what we're going to tell them. We're going to tell them, and then we're going to tell them what we told them. That's repetitive learning. Typically, it takes somebody 3 times to actually hear what you said. That's why, and we'll get into this, by the way, on follow-up, you can send the same text message at least 3 to 5 times before the customer even will read your text message. So save yourself all recreations of text messages and just resend the same one. It's very effective. But we'll get into that there too. So after we start explaining our services, we want to be very intentional in explaining why we're out there and why they called us out there. So for example, let's use a roofing analogy. They called us out for a roof. Well, we're going to specifically focus on the roof and why they called us out there. We're going to be walking out in the driveway, kind of looking up, showing them the roofing system from the ground. But ultimately, we know we can also do siding. We can also put some windows in their house. We can do some gutter work. But we're not focused on that right now. If you rush the upsell, the customer is going to feel that and ultimately feel like they're being sold, and they're going to retract. So it's all about why the customer called you out. Once all their questions are answered and they're satisfied and you know that they felt heard and understood, you would then say, now additionally, as we're doing the roofing system, hey, by the way, I didn't know if you know this or not, we also do siding. I also noticed that your siding needs some help. You know, it needs resurrected. We can help you with that. You know, and or the windows. And you kind of go into the upsell in the pre-inspection, because if you wait to the end of the deal to bring these things up, they ultimately know they're being sold. If you don't bring it up in the pre-inspection, and you bring it in at the end, they're going to feel the upsell, and that's not going to work. So we want to bring everything up in the beginning, and then as we continue through, we want to let the customer know. Now, if we're doing a roof, please don't invite the customer up onto the roof. I made this mistake one time. It was an 85-year-old man, and jokingly I said, hey, you can come on up with me if you like to. And he took me up on it. And at that point, I can't stop somebody from coming up the ladder. You know, I was like, oh no, I'm just kidding. No, he came right up that ladder. Don't ever jokingly or ever invite anybody up onto the roofing system, especially an 85-year-old guy. So learn from my mistake, please. So as you do go up on the roof, you're just gonna let them know, hey, give me about 15, 20 minutes. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get everything together, and then I'll come knock back on the door. Be very communicative with the customer. Be very clear of what you're going to do. This is very important because they might not know that you're coming back. They might leave. I've had that happen to me when I didn't communicate properly and let them know I'm giving them an estimate on the spot and give me 15, 20 minutes, I'll knock back on the door. Well, if I didn't communicate that, sometimes I'm getting up the ladder and I see the garage door opens and they're leaving. So we want to make sure that they know that the appointment's not over yet. And ultimately, whoever's setting that appointment, letting them know kind of the overview process. This is going to take about an hour or 30 minutes too as well. So you have a heads up. So as we go do our inspection, we're going to do our inspection like nobody else. We are going to be investigators. We're going to put our Sherlock Holmes hat on, grab a magnifying glass, and we're going to start looking at every single crack and crevice of that roofing system. We're trying to build a case because ultimately you have to view it this way. You're going to be sitting in front of a judge, in front of a courtroom, and you got to present your case of why your product is the best. Now, there's going to be opposing parties. The person who was there before, they're the counterparty, the one that's throwing pre-objections at you. This customer has most times already met with somebody and or has a good idea about your product. And I actually have found sometimes as a rookie sales rep, they knew more about my product than I did. And if a customer can feel that they know more about you than your product, they disqualify you because they can go online and they can research it. And they look at all that different stuff. And when you come out, they actually know more about that than you do if you're a rookie sales rep. So just make sure that if you're new, that you're staying on point and you have actually taken the courses to make sure you know your product and your services. But most importantly, make sure that you know the competition's even as good as you know your product. You have to know what's out there. You know, you ever heard, keep your friends close but your enemies closer? It'd be a good idea to make good friends with your competition. Know exactly what they're at, what they're doing, how they're being effective, and what their products are. You need to go, if, again, your roofing analogy example, you need to go out and look at the Owens Corning, the GAF, and the other ones out there and know how they compare with your product in your HVAC business. What other air conditioners and ductworks and sealants and things like that are out there for your industry? You need to know what those are. So as we do our inspection, we're pulling things apart, we're looking at things, we're doing and taking pictures and being very detailed in a way that nobody else would. Because ultimately what's going to happen is a lot of other guys won't even get on the roof if you're doing selling a roof, or if it's an HVAC. A lot of guys won't even walk around the house. They won't do the pre-inspection. They're not going to do the inspection. They're going to go right into their pitch right at the door. They've already kind of pre-programmed and looked at stuff, and they might walk around just a little bit, but there's no communication. But as we do that, when we come down off the ladder, we're going to go to our trucks, and we're going to start building the estimate. Now, this is the key. How many companies do you know that do not give estimates on the spot? About 95% of all companies in home service industries do not give an estimate on the spot. So it goes against the rule of psychology. We're going to sell with logic and close with emotion. So all we've done at this point is, in the rapport building stage, we got them emotional, because all connection is not logic. You know that? It's actually going to be emotion. Think about it. You don't connect with somebody on a logistical level. We don't talk about, I'm at about a 7.5 in how I feel about you right now. We don't judge it that way. We judge it by how we feel. It's by an emotion. So as we continue to do that and build that relationship, we go into the sell. Now they're asking questions. It's all mathematical. It's all logic. But as you come back down, you're now going to get them into an emotional state when you present your inspection report. So ultimately, we have to present the deal in front of them when we're there. If we don't do that, we can't close a deal. I guarantee you 100% of the time, if you don't present price, you will not close a deal. Is that clear enough, right? That sounds simple enough. So pretty straightforward. Because if you did all of that work, let's say you did all of that point, and I've seen companies, they're really good at meeting, greeting the customer, of building rapport, doing the inspection, pre-inspection, and doing the inspection report, and they said, I'll email you, have a great day. Boom. You just lost all of it right there. You spent all that time, your BDC spent about 5 to 10 minutes on the phone with them drilling them questions. You've already spent maybe $150 to $300 for that lead, and you spent 30 minutes to an hour driving there. You spent now this time 30 minutes with them. You got 30 to 40 minutes back to the shop, and now you have to create the email. Now you have to send it off to them, and now you have to follow up with the customer. But in all of that, you never even guaranteed yourself a sell. So there's a lot of work that goes in meeting every single customer. So it's important that we take the time to present the deal. And if you can't present a deal, I have presented well over $100,000 roofing systems, sidings, windows, any exterior products. I had it down within 15 to 20 minutes. I don't care what it was. It's all square footage. All you need is a pre-templated sheet. It all goes down to square footage. And if you don't have the information, you need to do the work in your company to get that information. And if you're a sales rep for a company who doesn't have that information, go work for a different company, ultimately, because you're not going to do very well there. You need to go and get a templated sheet. Now, this cannot be put onto a computer screen. I promise you, if you take a computer and you put it in front of somebody, what is the first thing they're going to do when they look at the estimate? I'm telling you, this goes
straight to the bottom.
Well, they're going to go straight to the bottom, but they're also going to they're going to grab the side of the computer. People want to hold something when they're looking at it, especially when they're looking at a big decision. They want to hold it in their hands. So if you show somebody on a computer screen, they can't hold it in their hands, but they're going to try. If you have a piece of paper, that's ownership. They're now going to have it in their hands. They're going to see it. They can feel it. Okay? Now, what Rob said earlier, too, we want to be careful how we do that because they can also rush to the bottom, right? So we'll control that flow, and I'll show you how you do it. But once we come down off the roofing system, we're going to go knock back on the door, and the first thing that we're going to do as they open it, we're going to take a step towards them. We need to get inside the house. The doorway is the death zone. If you stay in the doorway and their glass door, their main door opens up and their glass door and they're there talking to you, that's a clear sign that we didn't build enough rapport. There's no trust. People who don't let you in their house don't trust you. At this point, we might as well give ourselves a number 1 out of 10 and say we have failed and turn around, walk by our truck, and might as well leave, because at this point we have nothing. If they come out and meet you and say, oh no, the front porch is good, again, another ultimate sign that they don't trust you. Because people don't make decisions, big decisions, standing up. They sit down. Psychology shows that if you're going to make a big decision, you're sitting down when you make that decision. So we want to get inside the house, and you're going to take a step towards them. A good place you can sit down. And if you need to, have your shoes off. This will really help. If you already have your shoes off and you have that customer, you're not sure if they're going to let you in the house, make sure you take your shoes off, because you're letting them know, look, I'm coming in. And as they open the door and as you get in there, as we walk in, we're kitchen table good. We want to get in the house and we want to get to the kitchen table. All great decisions are made around the kitchen table, right? Let's be honest. So as we're walking through, we're going to regather the decision makers. So if we have met somebody before, we're going to re-invite that person in. If we see somebody new, the number 1 rule, does anybody know it with closing a deal?
Catch them up to speed.
Yes, treat everybody like decision makers, but ultimately catch them up to speed. Absolutely. Everybody's a decision maker. If a cat meets you, hey, little buddy, come with us. Let's go. Like whatever. Like I'm not joking. We want to give everybody the equal attention as if they were the decision maker. You see a child there, you go down, you shake their hand. Now, ultimately, we know they're not a decision maker, right? But we want to include everybody. We don't want to put that one person way up here, because nobody cares more about anything in life than their family. And we want to be genuine. Okay, so don't be a jerk about it. You don't want to, like, if you hate kids, be like, hey, how you doing? Oh, yeah. We want to ultimately care. The customer is going to feel that. So, if you don't like animals, get used to it. Get used to liking animals. Go to Petco and go hold a couple bunnies, something. So as we do that include everybody, we get to the kitchen table and we sit down. This is not the time that you're going to pitch your deal. We are going to begin, and how are you on time, Tony?
22 minutes.
Okay, cool. So as we sit down with the customer, we are not seated across from them. We're not interrogators. We want to be seated beside them. If it's a husband and wife, or let's say somebody, it's a boss and a manager or something like that, do not sit between them either. It's like subconsciously you're creating a wedge between their decision. You want to be seated on the either side of those decision makers, not between, and make sure you're not sitting across from them. As we do that, now we're a friend. We are not going to be an interrogator. And Greg, they used to do this stuff way back. This isn't new stuff. They did this back in the 80s and stuff like that too. So old school is the new school. So coming into that, as we're sitting beside the customer, we are then going to start building a relationship. We're going to recreate that rapport. We're going to dive deeper into that relationship. Or as we walked around the property, generally find something that was very interesting around the property. And you have an amazing lake back there, or that backdrop. Nobody's ever going to build behind you with that preserve. That's beautiful. How often do you go out there? I love nature. That's so cool. You see any birds out there, whatever else it is, and you start, what, Nate? What?
I hug trees on the weekend.
You hug trees on the weekend? Yeah, maybe keep that one to yourself.
It seemed like that was the route you were going with how much you love nature, man.
Well, yeah, that's true. I genuinely love trees. I don't know what to tell you, man. So, yeah, whatever, where it fits. But if hugging trees and letting the customer know you'll hug trees on the weekend, if that works for you, great. It hasn't worked for me yet. But maybe I'm not saying it right. But as we do that, we were going to generally compliment the customer. This really works well. We're going to dive into personalities here in the next couple sessions. But if you have you ever hear of the DISC formula? So like a D personality is very driven. They typically already know what they want. They called you out there because they know they already want to do business with you. They are very confrontational, so they have to know that they're in charge all the time. If they're not in charge, they're not happy. And they have big egos. So feed their ego. So if you have a personality in front of you, you know it's a driven personality and somebody who's in a charge type person. Now ultimately, we always maintain control without letting them know they're in control. You know, it's kind of like the puppet on the string. We're pulling the strings and they think they're moving the arm, but we're actually moving it for them. So that's what really good salespeople and closers ultimately do, for their benefit, by the way. Now, when we get into it, like I said, feed their ego. Man, someday I just wish I could have a property like yours. And how long did it take you to find this location? Or man, that truck out there, that is my dream truck. You have the nicest truck in the county. Well, you know, it needs to be genuine. You know, if you don't like, let's say, okay, if you are like you don't know anything about floors and you walk in and you're a car guy, you go, oh, these are some nice floors. Yeah, this is a porcelain. This has the ceramic coating on here and all this. And they know that you're so full of crap, that's not going to work very well. So we want to find someone we can generally connect with the customer on. But as we do that, the whole point is we're rebuilding a relationship with the customer. We're resetting that foundation, reconfirming the bridge, making sure that the pillars are there. So we have the bridge of rapport, but what upholds that bridge of rapport is?
Pillars.
Which is?
Relationship.
PPR. Rob actually came up with that phrase, by the way. Let's give Rob a hand for that. I stole it from him, the old fossil. So PPR is personable, professional, and relatable. Ultimately, they have to, not just having rapport, but what supports that rapport and that trust is they have to see you as personable. They have to see you as a professional, and they have to see you as relatable. You can be very professional, but come off like a jerk, and they still won't do business with you. You can be the authority in your field, but they don't trust you as an individual, so they don't trust to do business with you. Or you can be very personable. They would trust you to watch their cats on the weekend, their kids, their bunnies, whatever, right? But they will not trust you in your field of authority. They don't think that you could actually put the roof on properly. So ultimately, you can have trust, but you don't have professionalism. That doesn't work either. So you got to have those two, personable, professional, and then relatable. Relatable is in building a relationship. They have to generally feel like they're heard from you. So if we could do all those things, now we can start diving into our inspection report. The inspection report, we put that Sherlock Holmes hat back on, and we start going through the pictures, and we start showing them like, hey, this is what's going on with the roofing system. I know you called us out here for a repair. However, if you were my good friend, I would advise you this, and this is why. And you start showing them. Now, generally, let's be genuine here. If they ultimately don't need a new roofing system, do not sell them something they don't need, don't want, or can't afford. That's not sales. You know, that's a dictator. We don't want to be that. We ultimately want to help people. So as we begin to do that and go through our inspection report, we just comb through it and we do a job like nobody else is going to do. And I'll end it with this, and we'll get into this a little more next week. But we want to, if somebody was going to put the same roofing system on, because come on guys, we can all agree, do we all agree that people can get the same product and do the same service that we can do? The only difference that we're going to make is pointing out what our product and services can do that the other person didn't say. Anybody can put a roof on. Anybody can sell GAF and Owens Corning and all that stuff. Well, let me tell you, when we put our shingles on, it's not just a 4-nail pattern, it's a 6-nail pattern. And we also, when we put those on, we double felt it, and this is why. And we go through all the different scenarios of why it's important. Now, you said it, even though the other company is going to do it, you said it, you now own it. You created more value, and you separated yourself from the competition by selling the same product. So the inspection report is very, very important. So next week, we'll get a little bit more on how to go down the worksheet and the numbers, and ultimately we'll get into the close, and we'll bring some people up here, and we'll do some objectional handling, and we're going to get ourselves so sharp that we're going to be closing 10 out of 10.